Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
Workplace equity is all about making the employees feel empowered and leveling the playing field for every employee. When organizations promote equality in the workplace, they benefit from the competitive advantage of employing diverse talent. Equity in a workplace refers to fair treatment for all. Transparency is evident to cause and effect, where everyone expects the same in terms of consequences and rewards. When there is equity, there is equal opportunity. When you give importance to equity, it creates a positive work environment for both the employees and the employer. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Vantage Influencers Podcast. I am your host, Gautam. June is Pride Month and a celebration of equal human rights. Thus, today's episode is dedicated to the topic Workplace Equity Helps Improve Workplace Culture. Organizations must have a forward-thinking ideology and aim toward fostering an equitable future for their employees. And we have with us just the right person to enlighten us on how promoting workplace equity improves company culture. She is none other than Yeshasvini Ramaswamy. Yes, you guessed it right, the CEO of Great Place to Work India. Yeshasvini Ramaswamy is recognized as one of India's leading senior entrepreneurs. She combines deep expertise in organizational behavior, artificial intelligence, and investment management to bring analytical rigor to business transformation projects. She has led numerous projects for Fortune 100 companies. She represented India in the Fortune Most Powerful Women program and received the Times Power Women Award for Excellence in Entrepreneurship. She is also a fellow of the Institute of Directors. She is actively involved in community work through fundraising and participating on global advisory boards of high-impact NGOs in rural entrepreneurship, education, and health. Hello, Yeshasvini. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Gautam. Thanks for having me over.
Thank you so much for joining us today amidst your busy schedule. And I'm sure our listeners will have a lot to learn from you. So to begin with, I would like you to introduce yourself to our listeners and give a brief about yourself, like your hobbies, interests, and something that I might have missed mentioning about you.
Well, I think you were very kind in your introduction, Gautam. I've kind of had a very interesting career so far. What about me? I think I'm a simple girl at heart, have a very simplistic, uncluttered view of life. I think my motto is live and let live. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I think we should begin.
Sure. In that case, we could just jump to the topic. And, if I were to ask you, according to you, what is workplace equity?
I think the word equity has taken a lot of currency of late. And, I cannot stress enough the importance of business leaders to invest more in creating this conversation in their workplaces. Mm-hmm. Creating an equitable workplace culture is the need of the hour. You see, Gautam, I think the pandemic has disrupted a lot of traditional way of working.
Definitely, yes.
Right. So I think we used to go to office. The office has come home. Mm-hmm. And this has opened up a lot of opportunities for talent to work from anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. And your office can actually be anywhere. So I think the whole ecosystem of talent has been disrupted permanently thanks to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And because it's been disrupted, I am no longer limited to hire people from a particular city, from a particular background, because my office is situated here. I think working remotely has opened up so many talent pools that it becomes imperative for the business leaders to do the right thing, which is take the conscious decision to reach out to groups that are socially or economically or both the socio-economic communities, give them a chance, give historically underrepresented groups a chance, because the time is right now for us to do the right thing. And equitable is, even though it's a popular word, I think it requires a lot of courage and a lot of honest conversations to really make it happen within workplace culture. It cannot be limited to just lip service.
Sure. Thank you so much, Yeshasvini, for giving the description about workplace equity as to what it means to you. But when we hear this word workplace equity or equality, I know both are different, but what we directly relate to is DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, how does DEI play an important role in nurturing a great company culture?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is from a different lens, and I think one of the most important metric today and for at least easily a couple of years down the line will be a metric of belongingness that every CEO should measure. Now, for me, if I were to draw out a formula of measuring belongingness, that would just, for me, be diversity plus equity plus inclusion is equal to belongingness.
Okay.
And again, this stems from what we are facing today, isn't it? We are having very diverse pools of talent working in our organization. It becomes imperative that they feel included. I mean, a very simple example and a distinction between diversity and inclusion, and equity was a later term that got added in. I think in initial days, it used to be called D&I.
Yes.
And you may have heard about it, or our listeners have heard about it. And for those who've heard about it, please be patient. But, it's a very simple distinction, right? Diversity is your tick in the box. So let's say you want to throw a party, you would invite this community, maybe that gender, from different backgrounds, and that's it. But inclusion is once they turn up at the party, you invite them to dance with you.
Yes.
That's inclusion, whether they're feeling included, right?
Yes.
And equity is that nobody in the organization should even doubt that their chances at fair pay, promotion, opportunities to innovate, opportunities to grow, opportunities to travel is limited in any way because of biases that exists in the system.
Yes.
And a lot of these biases can be conscious, like there may be a preference for a certain community, for a certain job role. Or in some cases, it may even be an unconscious bias where you don't know about it, but the system works in a particular way. And equity is all about that, ensuring and encouraging your employees so that there is no doubt in their mind that this is a place where I can be myself. And for me, if you do these three structures very strongly and with a lot of right intentions, it will create a sense of belongingness. And a sense of belongingness is so crucial, Gautam, in today's world because we're all in hybrid. I mean, look at us, the way we're talking.
Yes.
It's not face-to-face at all. We're probably in different cities.
Yes.
And it's the same thing in the organization. So, in fact, in the last 2 years, there have been growth in a lot of industries, be it retail, banking, IT. And there are companies where we have done research where more than 40 to 50% of the organization has never seen the office.
Yeah.
They've all joined virtually. And if I take that conversation a little forward, there've been people who've joined and left virtually. So there's actually a section of population that we've never met.
Yes.
And now if I really want to bring in new best practices and if I want to innovate, I think I have to invest in developing that sense of belongingness. So for me, DEI then becomes a no-brainer.
Sure. I think I would completely agree with you on this because only when an employee feels that, I belong to this place, is when they will have that engagement, that drive to work also, and, give their ultimate productivity to the company's success. And I think that is what lies in the leaders and the HR's hands, that, how you level the play field, how you do not show any sort of discrimination or any sort of biasness. But I think biasness is also sometimes very prejudiced. It's also because of, some people who come from a very privileged society and mindset. So I think, once we are able to eradicate those prejudices, is I think when we can, create that belongingness. Don't you agree?
Yeah, but I think I'd take a step back, right? For me, eradicating prejudice, may happen, may not happen. But I think what is absolutely essential is an acceptance today in the corporate world, and really taking the dialogue out of HR and putting it directly with the business leaders at the end of the day. Because I think the HR community is doing a fantastic job in translating the expectations that the leadership has into an employee experience. And the pandemic has again given us so many role models that and inspiring stories within the HR community that we can talk about. But I always say that the culture is set by the CEO.
Sure.
The HR is responsible for translating that culture into an employee experience, into an employee engagement. But if you delegate culture to HR, then most often than not, you may not have a great culture in your organization.
Sure.
So I think the beginning step is for us to accept that there are biases in the system.
Yes.
And, we need to do something about it.
Sure. So, when we think about, such biases or, such prejudices or inequality, whatever happens, and we tend to say that we need to promote equity, but they tend to forget that, equality and equity are different. What they say is they want to promote equity is what they're doing for equality. So, if you could just say that, what is the difference between equality and equity?
That's an interesting question. I think, equity is more of a long-term dialogue. So let's say I'm coming from a socio-economically deprived background, right? Equity would mean that I create a support system around you that not only makes you feel supported, but also if there are any insecurities or any gaps or weaknesses you may have, whether it's social or economic, I tend to correct it. Whereas equality is that, irrespective of who you are, you can come and apply to my company.
Yes.
Right. So let's say the job application process, and I'm simplifying it. I think we have a limited time, but this is such an interesting question. It's fairly simple. Let's say I have a policy saying anybody can apply to my organization for this particular role, and all of the applicants will be treated equally, meaning the process of screening and everything is the same. That's treating people equally. Equity is when you sit down, try to have a compensation conversation, try to have a career mapping conversation. You take into account their socio-economic backgrounds into structuring something for them. So equity is far more deeper and far more long-term than equality.
Sure. I completely get that. So, when we speak about, promoting workplace equity in the workplace, suppose, how can companies, I'm asking this because, you are the CEO of Great Place to Work. So, how can companies promote workplace equity to improve their company culture?
It's not easy. And I think we all appreciate and understand that. It's like, if you have to practice justice, it's not easy because there will always be one party thinking that you've been unfair to them, isn't it?
Yes.
So executing and administering justice is not easy. It's a complex process. And I think it's the same thing with equity also. So I think coming back to your question on how is it that organization can take the step forward, again, my submission is let's take the first initial steps rather than running way ahead. Because, the moment you're going to take some steps, there will be communities within your own company which may not look at it positively. And we had this dialogue 15 years ago when, we were advocating women in the workforce. I think today in the IT sector, nobody even blinks about it. But there was a time when, I was a part of a team where we were advocating it very heavily to say we need to have more women in the workforce. And then that led to a section of the community of men thinking maybe women were getting, a preferential treatment, which goes against the philosophy of equality. Isn't it?
Yes,
so I think I keep telling them that it sounds good. It sounds it says all the right things, but if you really committed to it, then you should be okay with a few sections of your community not on board. You need to have a courage to take some of those unpleasant decisions. Because the benefits that you're going to see are only in the long term. You're not going to have short-term wins. So that would be one. And two is, communicate a positive intention. Even if you talk about the community of LGBTQ, just communicating about it, creating awareness about it, I think goes a long way.
Yes.
In making it normal. The more exclusive you're going to make it, the more difficult it's going to be to make it mainstream. I think the trick is to communicate about it and be normal about it. Because the moment you're normal about it, the people around you are automatically going to be normal around it.
Yes.
And that's a good thing, because we've had a lot of instances where the intentions are always right, Gautam. But when you hire people from these communities, there is such a song and dance about it that everybody starts treating them differently from day one. And the company here is wondering what went wrong. Right? So my advice is just be normal about it. The moment you're normal about it, people get normal about it, and the acceptance is so much more higher. So I think we should do a lot of things, but these are all steps to create awareness would be the first step. Back it up with policies that are easy to implement, where the changes are visible. So recruitment could be a great function to execute some of this. You have promotions again that can become a part of this, and start that way. And then we can move into more serious conversations. The second bit, and I know it's a long answer, but it needs to be stated,
it's okay.
is that, HR is not for HR's sake, right? It's for the business. Similarly, the conversation of DEI is not because we want to be a part of the woke culture.
Yeah,
I think it is a business imperative. And let me explain, very quickly as to why it is a business imperative. I think one of the things that is happening today is that businesses across the globe are digital and borderless. So once I'm digital and borderless, then my consumers can be anywhere. Let's take, for example, an e-commerce business. I can have, what do you want to sell, Gautam? Let's say it's your business. What do you want to sell? Maybe a packet of tea or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I would rather sell our rewards and recognition program.
Right. So whether it's rewards and recognition or whether it's a pack of tea, you cannot say you need to be from this community, this country only to apply, right? Or you want to buy my tea, then this thing. So if my consumers are becoming global,
Yes.
if my consumers are becoming diverse, and if my consumers are who they are, right? Then my workplace culture has to be reflective of the consumers that I serve. The hotel industry, the hospitality industry is a great example of that. There are so many, great workplaces in the hospitality sector which invest very heavily in DEI, because their customers who sit in their cafe bar are diverse. So whether it is introducing, a few decades ago, consciously introducing African Americans into the workforce, or getting different types of groups as a part of your workforce, simply was a reflection of the customers who were engaging with them. So it's no longer a nice to do thing. The business complexities that we're all navigating today, with the pandemic really accelerating the hybrid work culture, where today a talent can possibly work from any part of the world. And similarly, you can have a consumer today from any part of the world. I think it just makes DEI center stage.
Wow, I think that was a great response. And I think our listeners will have a lot to quote from you. And
I'm glad.
No, I think it was an amazing response, because, diversity is not alone about acceptance, but also a business imperative. Yes, because we have to reach out globally, and it is all about outreach. Only when we are visible, when the company's values, and I think only when companies' values are visible, that you are equal, is when you can attract a lot of consumers as well. I think that was a very great point. And when you spoke about advocating women, and there were still issues. So how do you think that promoting gender equality is a great way to promote equity in the workplace? And I'm not talking only about women here. So it is about all gender. So do you think that promoting gender equality is a great way to promote equity in the workplace?
Why not, if it's working? That would be my take, because sometimes the energy is so high that we all end up trying to boil the ocean, and it's really not possible. So my take is always to say, whatever is working right, don't tinker with it, right? Let it happen. And dialogue about women today. A lot of people who are starting the journey of DEI may not realize, or may take the women issue for granted. But 15 years ago, it was hugely different. And I keep coming back to the same statement I made a couple of minutes ago, which is equity is always long term.
Yes.
It can't be a quarter on quarter thing. It's taken us 15 years for us to reach. And Gautam, these are specific sectors. There are still sectors, different industry verticals, which don't prefer women.
True.
The women movement largely that we see is in the areas of IT, ITES, and the public sector banks traditionally from the beginning have had a very good mix as far as gender is concerned. But there's very many industries where the woman conversation is still a challenge, especially at the leadership level. I think the entry level as a country, we've come far ahead. But women at a leadership level is still a huge challenge.
True. And I completely agree with you on that. And after women, I think, after, speaking about gender equality, we also remember the LGBTQ community. And across, organizations across the world are celebrating Pride Month right now. So, do you feel supporting the LGBTQIA community and recognizing them is a great initiative toward creating an equitable workplace culture and setting an example as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't express more excitement at this month. I just look forward to this month every year. One, because it's so colorful.
Yes.
And two, it just forces us to think questions that we may normally not think about in our daily lives. And whether I come from an LGBTQ community or not, the sheer fact that this community today has a voice, this community today can, really talk about their issues, and companies are taking positive, affirmative actions towards this is huge. It's huge. I can't stress enough that I think we somewhere under-celebrate it. It's breaking so many stereotypes all at once this month. So I'm hugely excited about the Pride Month, and not only this year, but every year. This is something that I look forward to. And especially with this community, we see that, for them, it's not a job, Gautam. I know that a lot of employees today take up a job and this is their salary. And if they get another salary hike, they may move on to another job, etc. But for this community, the number of conversations that we've had tells us that each member of this community looks at a job as their identity. It's much beyond a job. So the sense of commitment, the sense of loyalty, the intention to give their best every single day is something that we should celebrate, all of us together.
Wow, thank you, Yeshasvini. On that note, I would like to wish you Happy Pride Month.
Thank you, Gautam. To you too.
Sure. So how would you like to conclude your thoughts on this topic, that is workplace equity, improving workplace culture?
For India or globally?
Globally, just your opinion.
Well, I think everything has to be seen in the context of the work environments that we're operating under, and the pandemic has not yet behind us. I think there are conversations about a fourth wave, and I can be very sure that there will be multiple smaller waves. And the world as we knew it, like who would have thought that globally the skies would be quiet?
True.
That we can't fly from one country to another country. I don't think we grew up ever imagining that would be a possibility where I can't fly to another country. So a lot of things have changed for us. And I think the whole technology acceleration is a huge plus in the dialogue of DEI. Because my talent pool is now global, my aspirations are global, the economy is shrinking, the world is my oyster, and it has all kinds of people. So I think my message would be to really invest more in inclusive technology and strategize your workforce in a way that is equitable and diverse, and that is the right thing for you to do. And more than the right thing, you would see globally the businesses are being pushed towards doing this, because that's what the economy is kind of inching towards, these kind of dialogues.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
And I think we should celebrate more. I think the Pride Month should become louder, more colorful, and more people should come and have these conversations.
Thank you, Yeshasvini, for that enlightening conversation that we had. And now that we are slowly approaching towards the end, would you tell our listeners that how can they reach out to you?
Well, my Twitter handle is at Yeshasvini. That is YESHASVINI. They can reach out to me on that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Yeshasvini, for that amazing knowledge sharing session on how workplace equity helps improve company culture. We're truly delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you, Gautam, for inviting me over. And I must say thank you to all my colleagues at Great Place to Work India to also be so supportive of these kind of dialogues within the organization and the amazing work that they do with all our certified organizations. So thank you also the community of Great Place to Work certified companies.
Sure.
Thank you, Gautam, for having me over.
Sure. And I'm sure our listeners will be enlightened after listening to you. And with this, we have come to the end of this episode. And listeners, for more informative conversations, stay tuned and keep listening to Vantage Influencers podcast. Thanks, Yeshasvini. That was great.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.